Welcome back to Redefine Parenting with your host, Veenu Keller. We want to welcome you to Spanglish World Network and H.E.R Network on Zingo TV, channels 250 and 251. Zingo TV is a free app that can be downloaded on iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire Sticks, Roku and Roku Sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Redefine Parenting is a revolutionary approach to nurturing our children. Veenu will bring you live experts, transformative insights, and a fresh perspective, all aimed at helping families worldwide truly understand their children. Together, let's give them a childhood they won't have to heal from. Hello and welcome to another episode. I am so excited tonight to have a very special guest with me. This woman is incredible. I've known her for over a decade. We have shared lots of laughs and conversations because she's been my relationship coach for over 3 years, and she's really helped me expand my relationship with my husband, which allows me to grow as a person, because that's so important to me is my relationship. And as me and my husband's relationship grow, we can grow our relationship with our kids. And so Tammy and I are really excited because we have an opportunity to do an event together. Tammy and I have shared stages, some of the biggest speakers in the world. And now we've decided to bring her brilliance with bringing relationships, helping expand that, and my knowledge of helping parents understand their children and their children understand them. And we're bringing it together at the end of this month. We're really excited to talk to you all today about Thriving Together, the event that Tammy and I are doing. So Tammy, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm super excited to be here and share these moments with you and with your audience, because one of the things that I know is kids model their parents. And so one of the things that I think is really important is that the parents have great relationships for kids to model, right? And then that impacts their relationship with their kids, as you were just saying. So I'm really glad to be here to be able to support making those relationships even better.
And I couldn't agree more. You know, Tammy and I had an opportunity to do a webinar yesterday on, are we making our relationships, our partners and our kids our raving fans? Because so many of us have businesses out there and we're entrepreneurs. And 2024, one of the first things people think about when they think of goals is, how am I going to make my business better? Well, one of the ways we make our business better is to have raving fans. And yet, because Tammy and I work with relationships and families, how do we make our families better? How do we make our relationships better? Like, what outcomes, what end results do we want to see in our family? Like, what are we going to be celebrating this time next year because our family expanded? And one of the things that Tammy and I talked about was, are we allowing our partners and our kids to be our raving fans? And Tammy and I, we did some research and we talked to our family members and our kids, and we were able to gather what that means. And one of the top things that we've realized is that how many people are growing apart. Wouldn't you say, Tammy?
I would agree. There's just, life is getting so crazy. And it's interesting, Veenu, because you're just talking about like with business. And it's interesting with business because it's easy to put our time there because we get rewarded there and we can see the rewards. They're very tangible, right? It's like, cha-ching, I got that one, right? And with our families, it's sometimes feels like it's a lot more challenging to try to get there. And so it's easier to go where the rewards seem easier, but truly the rewards are more fulfilling with our family and our partners. That's where the real true rewards are. And so as we try to focus on like our businesses to make them go even better, because then we can bring those rewards back to our family, it starts to create what you're just saying is that distance, that space between. It's making them feel less important, less of a priority. And they start to feel like they're missing you. They're missing out. So it creates distance.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because I know for me, when I fell in love with my husband, he could do no wrong. Everything he did, leaving his clothes on the floor, no worries. So asking if he wouldn't mind taking the trash out after we had this a beautiful moment of cooking together and eating together, no worry if it was done the next day. And then all of a sudden, we grow closer. We make commitments together. We have kids together. We're married. And all of a sudden, those little rules that I had are now violated. There's no more like, oh, that's so cute. It's why aren't you doing it? One of the examples I used yesterday, and actually if you don't mind, Tammy, I'm going to share that story of how I came to you and Mike to coach us. Tammy and I had the honor of working an event together back in 2020, right when COVID happened. And I was listening to Mrs. Robbins, Tony Robbins' wife, talk about how in love we are with our person when we meet them. And then after a long time of being with them and the commitments change, right? There's different commitments, there's different expectations and rules. We start to put sticky notes if they didn't take out the trash when I asked them. They still don't put their clothes in the laundry basket. Can't they put the lid down on the toilet? They didn't pick up the milk like I asked them to. And next thing you know, we're looking at all the sticky notes. I can't even see the man I fell in love with. And in that moment, a tear came down my eyes because I noticed that I wasn't even looking at my husband anymore, the man I adored. And in that moment, Tammy kind of looked over at me and she saw me. She just kind of nodded her head like, I get it. So the minute I had that opportunity to walk over to her little booth, she just asked me, she says, so what's showing up for you? And I said, Tammy, I have a business coach. I have a life coach that helps me with my mindset. And what I realized is the one area that's so important to me, I don't have a coach with. And now all I see is these sticky notes. Do you remember that time, Tammy?
I do. I remember that conversation. I do, because it was like, and what was so touching for me in that moment was the realization that you had about how much you truly love him, but how you are no longer seeing him, and how easy it is for us to focus on all the things that aren't working instead of focusing on the things that are truly underneath all of that, that's truly there. The reasons we fell in love with them, the reasons we chose to be with this person. So yes, I remember that moment, and so grateful that we've had a chance to work together, because you and Brian have really made so much progress. You guys have done so great at implementing strategies and beliefs and changing how you communicate with each other. So, and therefore with, the kids and the family and so forth. So
yeah, so we all grow together. And one of the things that I realized talking to Tammy that evening was that we were growing apart instead of together. And my husband and I, we do our own type of personal growth. We both work in the field. And so I think we took for granted how much that we think we're absorbing, and yet what we weren't implementing or what we weren't seeing. And one of the best questions I think you've ever asked me, Tammy, is asking myself, what don't I see? And what I did not see was the growth that we were like growing apart instead of together, and how much the rules got violated and the expectations that we put on each other were part of those rules, right? In order for me to feel loved, in order for me to feel seen, it had to be this way, this way, this way. And the minute he didn't do it, all of a sudden I was the victim. Oh, poor me. And then the blame starts. And then our bond gets shallower.
So it's interesting because it's just like what you're saying, Veenu. When that happens, like we don't even realize we have these rules. Typically, we don't even realize, and we don't even know where they came from. Right. Except if you think back on it, a lot of times they came from our parents, right? We were looking at them or modeling them. They gave us our beliefs and our rules and how things should be. And we just do it. We don't even think about it. And we rarely actually choose what we want our rules to be.
Right.
And they start getting violated. So then what we do is we start making up a story, right? Because the event itself has no meaning, right? It's just an event. And we get to make up whatever story or meaning we want to give the event that just happened. And so we'll be like, okay, well, if he didn't do that, then that means this. And if he didn't do that, and it doesn't mean this. And then look, when he didn't do that, and it's kind of those sticky notes you were talking about. What happens is we begin stacking all
Mm.
these stories, right? So it's like a stack of pancakes, right? And if you want to look at it, the stack gets so high that you stop even being able to see your partner. All you can see are all these stories that we've made up about who they are and how they violate things and how they don't care and what that means. And we just start making all that stuff up. And it starts to create a really big distance because, frankly, you can't see around the stack. And so it's important that we start noticing that stack and start taking them off one at a time, like looking at like what's really the truth and remembering who our partner really is. And realizing that we're the ones that made up those stories. And if we want to go back and look at the event, we can easily choose a different meaning.
Yes.
So Veenu, if I could, I often use, when I talk about meaning and the stories that we make up, it reminds me of the example I give around a car crash,
Yeah.
right? So I use this often, as Veenu knows, right? So it's like if I'm driving a car and I get in an accident, I have my point of view of how I saw the accident. So that's my story and the meaning I gave it. Now, the person driving the other car would have a different point of view, a different vantage point of seeing that accident, and they would have a different meaning that they gave it. And maybe the passenger in the car saw it totally different than I did because of what they were looking at. And the person on the street that was watching the whole thing, they had a different point of view. So the event is exactly the same. Two cars met, there was an accident. But what we made it mean from all the different points of view is the meaning that we chose to give it. So the event stays the same, but the meaning that is available for us to look at, see, to give it can be as different as the next person. And we have the opportunity to change it, to choose what we want that to be. And when we have a really great belief about our partner or our children, like we believe who they really are and we remember that, it changes the stories that we make up and give about them, right? Because it's like what I know about my husband is he's adorable, he's a great man. So when I have a choice of two stories and I know that he's amazing with a lot of integrity and he's this really great man, this is the story I'm going to choose, right? Because it stays in alignment with what I believe about him. And that's all me. I get to choose what I believe about him and then the story that I make up about it.
One of the things that I love that you taught me, Tammy, years ago is that when we change what we see changes. And it kind of aligns with what you're talking about right now, you know? And I believe that you got a quote similar like that from Wayne Dyer.
Yep.
And that one quote literally changed my life. Because when I am just seeing, you know, my son be upset with me right now, all I can see is why I get defensive, why I'm not to blame. Why is he blaming me? And he didn't see this part and he didn't see that part. And because my filter is so based on me defending me and protecting me, I'm not seeing my own ownership. I'm not even seeing where he's coming from because I have blinders on. But when I start to open up that perception or to see it through a different filter, AKA a different meaning, right? It could be a different meaning to change that filter. All of a sudden, there's room to change our relationship. There's room to actually have a discussion where no one has to be wrong or right. It's just something that has happened, that we had a disagreement. There's probably been a rule violation or expectation that wasn't met.
Yep.
But when we change that filter, it's easier to see what the real cause is because we're so busy as parents especially, and even with our spouses because we're busy, that we're constantly trying to put band-aids over things. Like we're trying to always make the effect better. If I get angry because I trip over my husband's clothes on the floor, I'm always looking at being mad. So we're trying to solve being mad. We're trying to solve being mad. But guess what? If I just picked up the clothes and put it away, because that's the real cause, the anger would go away too. And so sometimes we're putting band-aids over things because we just want the peace. And that's kind of what Tammy and I are going to be diving deep into in the last week of January. We want to go deep into this so we can help you all out there change the filter you're seeing life in. Because I've had opportunities to be in homes where there's so much harmony. And what I realize is part of having harmony is realizing some of the missed moments that we have with our connection. And Tammy, you and I were over at your niece's house, and that's when I realized, like, as busy as they are, how they take those opportunities and they don't miss those connections.
That's true. They have really great rituals. And I think that's a really key piece when you find yourself in a place where you're feeling disconnected or you're feeling like you're missing having special moments with those people that you really care about, whether it be your partner or your kids or both, right? I think one of the things, there's always the spontaneous things that are really fun to do. And what keeps it there on a more consistent basis is when we have rituals, meaning, for instance, some people get together for dinner every night, right? That's kind of their rule. Everyone's at dinner. It's at 6:00. Everyone's expected to be there, whatever. But gosh, with our crazy lives, right? Things get so crazy, and times it's hard to make that happen. So what my niece does is they do it in the morning. So she made a deal with them that if they would all get up early and spend this time together, that she would make breakfast and have it ready for them. If they would all get up early and meet around the table, and they would have this time together that they would talk and connect and share. And it starts their day off so great because they feel connected. They feel seen and heard. They feel like they've had like this really great moment. They've been nourished, right? And it just starts their day off so great. And it gives a very different perspective to their day when they start it that way. And it's a way that they can make sure it happens, because many times there's not activities going on before school, not activities going on before work, unless it's like our workouts or things like that, right? But it's like there's not a lot of activities. So it's a sacred time for them that they know that everybody's going to make sure that they're there because they want to be there. They want to be there for their siblings and their parents and for each other, for themselves, because it's worth it. So it's creating certain rituals, I believe, that makes it so we make sure we don't miss those special moments.
Yeah.
So, we don't have to wait for a holiday to do that, right? Like I have sleepovers for my nieces and nephews on their birthdays, so they get to come over and they get to pick their dinner and they get to have breakfast and we just like spend quality time together. But that's only once a year, right? So it's finding times that you can do things like that you can create these magical, special moments. And the reason I like to do that is because it's a one-on-one time where I know that they're going to feel seen and heard. And what's important to them is going to get done or spoken about or experienced. And it's about really making each person feel special.
I love that. And what I love about that is, I'll take it even deeper. I could just imagine when Jacinda's kids are older and they have families, that family is going to probably be their top value, because Jacinda and her husband have made it their top value. Because when I was over there to eat, she would not even eat until her husband was at the table. That was so important to her. And what I loved about it is how much she valued her husband and how much it meant to her that if we're going to eat as a family, we're not a family yet until he's at the table. And so I love these, because even with rituals come values, and the rules start to change a little bit to make sure these values are lived. They're lived through the rituals. But you talked about something also about quality time, and it's one of the things that we also talked about yesterday, was how when we're talking about how do we build raving fans, one of the things that we talked about was understanding our love language. And it was interesting because you and I were talking about this, and my love language is acts of service. And acts of service can look different ways to me. It's, you saw something and you thought of me, so you thought of me. Because acts of service, like, you think about me in that moment, or before I got home, you filled my car with gas. Like when my husband does that and he washes my car, he's like, oh, I feel so loved. He missed me while I was gone. but that also means that there's something innate in me that thinks everyone's is acts of service. So I mind read, we do a lot of mind reading, and that expectation of my husband, I'm like, well, if he loved me, why didn't he do this? And I start blaming him and shaming him for things he didn't even think about.
Yes, we do that. Right? It's so funny because it's like, so Veenu's talking about with love languages, quality time, right? And we have our rules for what that is. And sometimes we don't share those rules. And then we expect those that love us to just know that, right? And it makes total sense. I get that they should know that. But if you've ever been on the other side of that, how not great that feels, right? It's like when, let's say that your husband's love language was acts of service and he didn't tell you what he expected, and then he's disappointed, and then he's upset with you, and you're like, wait, I didn't know what I missed. Like, what did I not do? Like, well, you should have known that I would have wanted this. And it's like, but how would I know that unless you told me? So it's interesting that we do that, and then it feels like rules violation. And then the challenge is now that my rule's been violated and I don't feel like I'm important and special to you because you didn't meet my love language, now my communication towards you changes. Now I'm not being that, oh, you washed my car and I feel so special, right? There's that communication, or there's like, yeah, I get it. I get, that I'm not important. Okay, fine. Yeah. No, what did you want for dinner? Sure. Mm-hmm. Right. It's like, what did I do? Like, where is this coming from? I don't even know what I did. And it's part of it's because there's the mind read that's not communicated. So one of the things, Veenu, that I've realized is that, so I like to feel good.
You do?
I do. I like to feel good. So I realized if I tell my husband what makes me feel good, there's a really high chance he's going to do it. There's a really good chance he's going to do it. And then I get to feel great. So I used to believe that. I had that same belief. And then I would come downstairs and I'd say, so I'm ready to go to dinner, thinking he's going to say, oh, I love your outfit. That's a new outfit. Or you look really great. No comment. Okay. Now I'm mad. So then I go to dinner and I'm upset. Right. And he's like, are you not going to talk to me? Well, no, not really. Right. It's like, well, then let's not go to dinner. Like, what is this about? Right. And I'm not even realizing that what I was doing was punishing him for not reading my mind.
Right. And I'm sure there's many of us listeners out there, me as well, that have felt that way. You get your hair done, you're all coming back from the salon, it looks all great. And they're on their way out the door and they're kissing you goodbye. And they didn't even say anything about your hair. It's like, I just spent 3 hours at the salon. Did you notice that? And then he comes back and he's like, hey, how are you? And I'm like, I'm fine. Like, fully closed. I'm totally close to him because he was supposed to know that my hair looked great because I got back from the hair salon and he did not say anything.
So you know what? I'm going to give you 2 examples. One is, so what I've learned is when that happens, I go, hey babe, I just got back. How do you like my hair?
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, I love it. You're right. Oh, is that new highlights or whatever, right? And the other example is my nephew Xander, and his love language is words of affirmation. And if you haven't done the love language test, you definitely want to go do that. It's online, love languages, do that because it's really helpful because you want to make sure you're meeting your kids and your spouse partner's love language, because knowing what your own is too would be helpful. But one of the things I love about Xander is he'll say to me or his mom or whatever, he'll say, hey mom, did you see me out on the field? Wasn't that a good kick? And she's like, yeah, it was really great. And he's like, do you remember mom when you told me that you thought my blue eyes were like made me so handsome? And she's like, oh, I do. I love your blue eyes. And he's like, and he just fills himself up, right? He just asks for what he wants. And it's the most purest form of not having an expectation, but just knowing that you need something and asking for it. And then making it easy for people to deliver. Yeah. So I love setting people up to win. And when I can tell you what I want and you give it to me and then I'm excited, that's a win for most of the people on the other side of that interaction. It's a win for them. They're like, gosh, that feels great. She's so happy. Because for most of us, that's what we want. We want to see our kids happy. We want to see our partners happy, right? So when we get to see that, it feels like, yes, I did it. I did that.
And it does feel good to win. I mean, I know that My husband's love language is quality time and touch. He loves physical touch. He loves quality time. Those are not mine, by the way. They are not mine. However, because I have an amazing coach, Tammy Tantilla, I have learned that that is how he receives it. And that no matter, because I would be upset. I used to get upset because I'm like, but Tammy, I did all the laundry before he got home. I put up all his clothes. I put fresh sheets on the bed for him. And she goes, yeah. And I'm like, and he didn't even notice. And I felt hurt because I was using my formula to receive love. And I assumed he would have felt the same way. And I remember, and this was years ago, and Tammy says, what if you would go up to him when he got home and give him a big hug and really just rub his back and just tell him how much you loved him and missed him. And you were so excited for him to come home. You got all the laundry done just because you were so happy to see him. And she goes, and see how that works. So I'm like, okay, because my husband travels, right? So I have opportunity to practice this. So I did that. And he was so excited. He's like, thank you, babe, for doing the laundry. You didn't have to do that. I appreciated it. And it was really because I was giving him that touch. He received because I understood his formula of receiving. And we do that a lot, especially with our kids too, because we think we know how our kids need to do it or what our kids need to do. And we don't. We don't. Like, my daughter is also quality time and physical touch. My son is quality time and words of affirmation. So knowing what, 2 of my 6 kids anyway, the twins, what they want and how to receive it, I'm able to communicate how they receive my love. And there's no question in my mind as if my kids know I love them, because I talked about this yesterday too, is working with kids. When I first coach them, I'll say, how do you know your parents love you? And they say, because they say they love me. They have to love me. I'm their kid. They feed me. I have clothes. And by the time we're done coaching, and I've helped the parents, because I coach not just the kids, I help the parents understand too. I say to the kids, I say to the parents, understand your kid's way of receiving love is not your way of receiving love. And I give the parents some ideas, because now I've coached the kids, so I have it. By the end of that time coaching the kids, I say, so I'm curious, how do you know your parents love you? And they say, Coach V, oh my gosh, they come to my soccer games, they cheer for me. And then afterwards, they want to take me out for a celebration dinner, even though we didn't win. And then they spend time with me. And then we did this because their time was quality time. And guess what? The whole definition of how they felt loved by their parents now was no longer because they had to. It's because they were spending time with them. And that's really what their love language was. So this plays a real big role, not only with our partners, but with our kids.
I think that's so important, Veenu, because here's what I have also noticed with kids, as well as us bigger kids, right? Is that when our love tank starts to get low. So if you can look at it as like a tank, and as you get, like say it's physical touch, right? And you get the hug, and then they hold your hand, and then they squeeze your hand, or they rub your back, and the tank starts to fill up, right? And your love tank is full, right? So now your love tank is full. But when it starts to get low and depleted, then we start to act a little bit differently, because we're starting to feel like, right? It's like we need these like words of affirmation, acts of service, physical touch. We need our love tank filled again. So knowing what your kids are, and when they start to misbehave, communicate poorly, one of the first questions you can ask yourself is, I wonder if their love tank is low. And whether it is or not, start to fill it. Just start to fill it. Start, like, if you know whatever that is, quality time, create that. If it's acts of service, do that. If it's physical touch, a lot of kids growing up is physical touch. They want that hug from mom or dad or whatever, right? They want that hug. They want that connection. And so it's just start filling it up, and then just notice how quickly their behavior changes, right? Because they're not coming from a place of, well, we all know what it feels like when you feel depleted, right? When you feel depleted, oh, right. But as you start to fill up, it's like you start to change your communication. Now you're much more engaged, you're happier, you communicate more effectively, like all that comes in. So just noticing when your kids or partner start, communicating in a different way or not feeling like their behavior matches who you know they are, just check in and see if their love tank might be low and start filling it up. It really, really makes a difference.
I love this. I love this. And again, everyone that's listening, this is what we're going to be talking about. We're going to actually give you strategies, like all the stuff that Tammy and I are talking about. We're going to make sure that you have strategies to make sure that things are changing and how to change that. We're going to really be going deep into the communication, how to be curious and not critical, to understand how we get our rules. And one of the things that Tammy and I love to talk about is beliefs, where our beliefs have come from and what supports our beliefs and how to change them. Because Tammy, I worked with a lot of people and as well as you, and I think a lot of kids think that it's impossible that they can have their own beliefs because this is what their parents want. This is what the parents believe, and I have to believe what the parents say. And a lot of conflict starts to come. And a lot of needing to be right, a lot of I need control now starts to bubble up. And what happens is that bond that you had with your kid or even your partner starts to get further and further apart. There's a lot of gaps that happen. I think you see that too, Tammy, with the couples.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because you were talking about how with our love languages, for instance, right, we want to give what we want to receive, right?
Yes.
Because there's like a belief that everybody's model of the world, how they see everything is the same as ours. And like, we don't like really think that, but we act like we do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's a part of us that knows that people think differently and act differently. But then there's the other way that's our way. And of course, that's the right way, right? That we think that our way is the right way. And so when people act differently than that, then someone needs to be right and someone needs to be wrong. And I'm probably the right one. Well, so it's, right. That's what we think. And so with our kids, there's not a space for them to have sometimes different ways of looking at things. And so they start to feel dismissed or not understood or not valued or like they can't communicate with you because if they don't communicate your way, the way that you want, then, there's not going to be an open space to do that. So it's really about creating an open space to be able to communicate and be able to hear and receive from that place so that we all want to feel like what we're saying is valued, whether
Right.
we agree with it, with what the other person's saying or not. We do want to feel like they were at least heard and understood. That happens so often with partners. Like we talked about, like what starts to create the stacks is like not feeling heard and understood. Is a big one of the ones. It's one of the ones that we'll be talking about at the end of the month. Is one of the things that creates that stack, and everybody wants to feel understood. So not feeling understood starts to create closed, poor communication, not feeling like it's safe to be able to communicate here, all those kind of things. And it's rules violations, it's beliefs not alignment, it's like a lot of those kind of things that can show up to start to create that.
And one of the things that will kill your harmony or your peace in your house is conflict. I've never been in a place that has full conflict where I felt peace and harmony. But the moment you get rid of the conflict and things are flowing and flexing and flowing and ebbing and flowing or whatever language you want to use, all of a sudden there's peace, there's harmony. My kids are visiting my older son this week. And last night, my husband and I were FaceTiming them, and they said, I bet the house is peaceful. And I said, well, why do you think that? And they said, well, because we're not there. And I said, so what would make it peaceful if you're not here? Well, we're not arguing. We're not fighting. Again, there's no conflict. And I said, actually, the house is very quiet. And we miss you a lot. And we're glad that you have this time with your brother and your niece. and your sister-in-law, and I hope you're having the best time, and the house is really quiet. And when you come back, how can we keep the house peaceful? What can we do, right? So it's engaging them and understanding, but it's interesting that they picked up on it, that they used that word. I bet you it's peaceful without us there. So even our kids start to realize that conflict gets rid of our peace and our harmony in our house. And that's one of the things that Tammy and I want to teach because, let's face it, when we get with a partner, when we get with someone, why do we choose that partner? Why is everything so great until it's not? Rules violation, conflict comes, and we're constantly trying to defend ourselves. So we could either be, constantly in defense mode, or we can be in a more, I don't know, what's the word we use, Tammy?
Ownership. It's having ownership.
Yep.
Yep. And we are super excited to teach you. Well, we have this at the end of the month. How to move it from blaming someone to taking ownership, and then changing how that whole communication plays out, and how differently it feels when you come to the conversation that way. It's pretty exciting, and there's lots of great. We all have a lot of opportunities where conflict can show up.
Yes.
Right? And like anytime that there's a difference in communication style or beliefs or rules, something you value, an event happens, right? It's like there's just a constant opportunity for conflict to show up. And so what Veenu and I love doing is setting a foundation so that when things show up, you have a foundation to go to that's like really allows you to process, interpret, have the lens, the glasses to see the situation in a way that serves you, in a way that serves your partner and your family. So we love starting from the very foundation and creating such a strong foundation for you so that it's like when that's solid, then all these different strategies can come into play. So like for us, one of our big things is for me, it's not about fixing strategies or fixing what you're seeing out here. Is fixing the cause. Right. Like what's causing this to show up? Because if you think about sometimes on our conflict, it's the same things that keep showing up. There's something that keeps getting triggered. There's something that keeps happening. You use that tonality with me again. It's like you keep saying this to me, right? Kids will say, like, you're not hearing me. The same things kind of keep just arising unless we change the foundation, because you can change a strategy, but once you change the foundation, then all of the behavior from that shifts and changes.
It does.
When we do it, so does our family. Because like Veenu said earlier, the Wayne Dyer quote, when we change how we see things, the things we see change.
Yes. And I love that, and I was also thinking about when you were talking about earlier in the conversation, you were saying something that triggered me to think about what kids want. Kids want to be safe. I've always, the foundation of coaching kids, they want to feel safe. Boundaries make them feel safe. Being nurtured makes them feel safe. Being seen and understood makes them feel safe. But I also realized that when I got into a relationship, or my girlfriends get into a relationship, the one thing they're looking at also is, do I feel safe? And that's one of the things that Tammy and I are going to explore is, what does it mean to be in an open, safe, and trusting space when you have that relationship with your children and with your partner? What does open mean? What does it mean to feel trusted? What does it mean to feel safe? That you can have that open communication, that trusted communication, that safe communication, that you're not going to be judged. It's turning our understanding, our mindset from being critical to curious. And Tammy and I have so many different techniques because we've been working with families for over almost 3 decades, and together that's 6 decades, people,
That's true.
of knowledge and learning and understanding to really help families. And, to be honest, the reason why Tammy and I came together is because the one thing that because Tammy and I are entrepreneurs that we're always focused on is making more money, having a better life. And we ask the question, for what? For our family. But yet it's the family that we're not putting enough intention and attention on. So how is that growing? How is it growing? And when we say that people want to end suffering, one of the conflicts that I see in kids today, and I work with kids from all the way from like 5-year-old all the way up, is the conflict of feeling connection and love. They feel alone, especially after going through the phase of COVID where the world shut down. They don't have that understanding of connection. Their connection are these. It's the screen. It's like a missed opportunity on how do we connect with our kids. I had one client when I said to them, Tammy, I don't know if I share this with you, when I said, what's the best way to communicate with your kid? And they say, oh, texting. I said, really? So to have a conversation with them about their room or about something you're proud about them. Oh yeah, I text them. And it's really kind of where we have gone. And Tammy and I want to bring this back. We want to bring the love, the connection, the togetherness of families back together. We want to teach families how to thrive. And that's really what we've been working on.
We have. We do want to be happy. We want those that we love around us to be happy, and to create a space where we can grow together and learn together and become better. I mean, the fact that if you're watching this, you probably have some kind of a drive to have a better communication, better experiences in your life, that you want to grow yourself, you want to provide better experiences for those around you. So first, I would just want to acknowledge you for even being here, because that speaks a lot to who you are. And it's why we want to invite you to join us at the end of the month, because we're going to do a deep dive, and we're going to go in and we're going to really support you in having 2024 be a different year for you and your family, because you're going to be able to, first of all, for me, the biggest communication piece is with myself. Because when I change how I communicate with myself, I change how I communicate with everyone else. And it changes how everything else rolls out. Like, my husband had just had a hip replacement. And so he was like feeling a little irritable with all the pain. And I'm like, gosh, he's being irritable. And then I said to myself, well, I wonder what my part in that is. Right? It's like the question that I ask that says, I take ownership when I come to that place, because I want to make sure that my communication is always showing up in a way that supports those around me. And so that's what we would really want to do for you. We want to help you create a way to have great communication with yourself, with your partner, and especially for your kids, because they're going to model your communication. And I think one of our biggest responsibilities with children is to teach them how to handle emotions, how to communicate well with people, how to communicate well with themselves, how to handle challenges that come, and they're going to model us. So we want to make sure that we're setting a great example for them. So we're excited for you to come join us.
And I think, and my listeners that listen to my show, thank you. And one of the things you hear me say all the time is give children a childhood they don't have to heal from. If we think of, as adults, where our pain has come from, when we say trauma, whatever word we want to use, those events that happened in our life. If you had better communication with your parents, and you had that open, safe, and trusting space to communicate with your parents, how would you be now? What would life look like for you now as an adult? Because I know for me, a lot of what I had to work through in my life is because I didn't have anyone to ask me those questions, that I felt judged. If I went to a therapist, I felt judged. If I went to my mom, I felt judged. Knowing that my mom did the best that she could with the resources that she had, and my mom did. My mom's my hero. And yet, some of the pain that I had to grow through in my adult life came from the fact that I didn't have that growing up, that ability to communicate with someone. And that's what Tammy and I also want to help with. This is really a foundation of how do we communicate better going forward. The world has changed. There's generational gaps. We cannot be raising our kids the same way we were raised as kids because it's just different. I'm a Gen X kid. We were the latchkey kids. I was growing up in a time where both parents were going to work, leave at the beaver. I'm dating myself now, was no longer there, right? Mom wasn't home cooking dinner and cleaning. No, us kids were doing chores now. We were cleaning because mom was working or my parents were divorced. And now somebody put on Facebook the other day that if you have a child that is born in 2024, they will never know the world before AI. And I was like, oh my gosh, how true is that? How true is that? You know, it's my generation was the last generation to know the world before electronics, before we had internet and computers and, you know, a phone that we can carry everywhere we go. So, you know, we really have put a lot in this because this is the time. This is the time to really look at our families. And as businesses are growing, how are we growing in our families? You know, what do we want 2024 to look like going forward?
Kind of reminds us what we were talking about yesterday, and Veenu kind of started this conversation with that, is how much energy we put into creating fans in our business and how great it is to create fans in our lives. Yes. To have people who are our fans, who love what we bring to the table, that love who we are, and how important is it for so one of the things I shared was a great way to have all these great fans is to become one. So become a fan of your partner, become a fan of your children, and how to do that in a really great, healthy way that they feel heard, understand, significant, a priority, appreciated, like all those things that, if you think about it, when you think about a fan that says, oh my gosh, you've got to go eat at this place. It's like the best place ever, right? When you think about that, when you're talking about the people that are important to you, like my husband truly is amazing. Like his heart, his generosity, like all the things that he does, like I love being his raving fan. And I sincerely mean it. And you know it when I say it. So we want to create that for you because you deserve to have that in your lives. You deserve to have fans that just are crazy about you and people that you're crazy about as well. And that you want to celebrate and appreciate. So that's what I think 2024 can be for us, is creating people in our lives that appreciate who we are and that we really acknowledge and appreciate those around us in a really loving, supportive way.
So what Tammy and I did is, because we know parents are busy and we are promoting family time. So we realized that, yeah, we could have done this in a one-day event, but what we decided to do is do it in a 3-day event where it's only 2 hours on Friday night. We're going to come together. We're going to set some foundations. We're going to dig deep in beliefs and figure out why are we here so we can help you get the outcome. And then on Saturday, it's 4 hours, and on Sunday, it's 4 hours. So you still have most of your day with your family. It's not cutting in because we know that there's sports and dance and family time, and we know how important that is, and we're promoting that. And that is why we've done a 3-day event, but it's really not full days. It's a few hours to come and invest in your family, invest in you, because your family and you are worth it. And we want to give that to you. So please come join us January 26th, 27th, 28th for a few hours to help make your family thrive together. Thank you, Tammy, for being here, and we will see you guys at the end of the month.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Redefine Parenting with Veenu Keller. Follow her on Instagram at Veenu Inspires. To learn more about Veenu, as well as download her free ebook now, go to www.veenuinspires.com. This show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out www.spanglishworld.ca for all your news and programming. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it.